Good evening and welcome back to another live episode of Red Tinted Glasses here on the Red Tinted Glasses YouTube channel. And as Adam Heddle says, Calum, it's nice to finally be talking about a win because in round one of the Ross County doubleheader, we romped to a 4-0 victory over the Staggies. It wasn't maybe the best opening, but I'm just glad we're sitting here on a Monday live finally talking positives about Aberdeen.
Well, I'm glad we're talking about a win. However, I'm disappointed it's only 4 goals we got to talk about. I thought we were absolutely excellent, and I think we mentioned in the previous episode after the Frankfurt game and the build-up to this game, maybe that Frankfurt game was sort of what we needed, despite the fact we thought this is the last thing we need a game against Frankfurt, and that sort of showed. I think from the off, everyone's sort of belief was up. It seemed the players were a bit more confident and they were playing football, which is new to us this season essentially. And I think going into the game as a fan, I felt pretty confident about it, which is unusual so far this season. So delighted and plenty to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. The Dons are back, as Jay Johannesson says, and Martin Davison kind of probably echoing what you've just said as well. A lot of good performances throughout the team, and I'm sure we'll get stuck into that as well. And we discussed this point as well. Stewie mentioned on previously about the fact that we shouldn't have a knee-jerk reaction to the team news when the team lines are announced. And funnily enough, after seeing his tweet, I saw your quote tweet, and you didn't really kind of have that knee-jerk reaction. You, I think, more were kind of speaking about the changes that we made to the team, and it was just the 3 changes: Connor Barron, Duk and McGrath coming in to replace Jack McKenzie, Dante Polvara and Leighton Clarkson. I felt a bit sorry for Dan not getting any minutes yesterday, but I think, to be honest, the 3 changes, obviously McGarry aside, were probably the right changes, because I think they were kind of the players we discussed on the preview side, both Dante and Jack especially.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I looked at the team and I thought there's maybe going to be a bit more rotation. However, 3, I suppose that's a good level where there is some more fresh legs. However, but you keep the general sense there's a bit more consistency, which I think helped. In terms of bringing in McGarry, I thought, yeah, that's nice. He's more attacking than Jack McKenzie. We should be more dominant. The onus should be on us to play football. And in theory, I think it would have been a good move had it not gone tits up after 5 minutes for him.
Yeah, I know. I mean, Rory found that absolutely hilarious, that there was a player jumping up and rolling around. I don't think Jimmy McGarry will find it hilarious, and just hope it's not too severe, as the New Zealander pulled what looked to be a hamstring and looked to be in a lot of discomfort. And I feel sorry for him, because he has had a positive start to his Don's career in terms of, as you say, the attacking intent he brings to the side, and a lot more maybe dynamic and younger than Johnny Hayes as well. But it was Johnny that Barry opted for to replace him. And of course, Johnny was quite heavily involved in some of the action in the early stages of the first half, which we'll come on to in just a second, because as well as the McGarry change, the first probably 15-20 minutes were, as Paul Donaldson mentions, quite cagey from both sides. But he said after the first goal we looked in control, but I thought up until then, in my probably County maybe just edged it, and we were the more nervous of the two.
Yeah, I think so. I think they seem to have had they had a couple more sort of half chances, I suppose, in the opening exchanges. In terms of the possession, there it was 49-51 in Ross County's favour. I think that was mainly because they took 5 kickoffs, I suppose. So that's maybe bumped their stats a little bit. But we did look a bit cagey, but I thought we settled very, very well. I think, to be honest, the McGarry injury probably wouldn't have helped in that, in terms of it's just sort of unsettled us a little bit more, and we had to make a change. It was interesting he went with Hayes. I thought for a brief second he was going to go with Ryan Duncan at wing back, but I was quite glad to see it was Johnny Hayes, and thankfully it didn't get to us too much, and we most importantly kept it tight, at least in that first 20, because had we gone a goal down, I fear it would have worked out very differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a couple of nervy moments in certainly the opening few minutes where I think Ross County had a corner inside the opening 2 minutes as well. But Johnny Hayes, as you said, was the opted substitution, and it's been a while since we've spoken about a Johnny Hayes concussion, and I thought kind of minutes after he came on, that's what we were going to be speaking about. But instead, maybe the kind of spark that we needed to get ourselves going. I mean, we've seen some ridiculous decisions in Scottish football this weekend, and VAR being used and not overturning red card decisions, in Dundee games specifically. But how Brown from Ross County was not sent off for a wild kung fu kick on Johnny Hayes. I mean, I think Don Robertson begrudgingly even showed the yellow card. I don't know how that's not been upgraded to red. I mean, you'll have had a prime view of how wild that was in Section S.
Horrendous. And immediately my mind sort of went back to, I was like, that's far worse than what Shinnie got a red card for. I think I did that a couple of times in the match. And to be honest, you could apply that same thing to a couple other instances across other games this weekend. But yeah, it was an absolute shocker, and the sports scene picked it up as well. Like immediately he had like a couple like gouges out his leg and a scratch as well, or a few scratches rather. I don't know how Brown got away with it, but what I did enjoy that I also had a good view of was Richard Jensen getting fucking right in there and at him and having a go, saying his piece, defending his teammate, and I really, really enjoyed that. And again, Jensen was very, very impressive for me, but we'll talk more about him later on.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I love how much he was noising him up, and I think he was fending off 3 Ross County players at one point, just standing his ground. But I think, kind of did get us going, and it felt like probably one of our first real attacks. We end up with a corner, and that man again, Richard Jensen, with probably one of the strangest assists you'll see all season. But we've got another one coming up later on as well. Look, if you don't buy a ticket, you don't win the lottery, and it's certainly the acrobatic attempt at scoring your first Aberdeen goal, but turns out to be a terrific assist. Bojan was one of 3 Aberdeen players there waiting at the back to knock it in and give us the opener. And I think for me, that goal was, given the kind of first 15-20 minutes, was a huge sense of relief that, right, we've scored, given, the whole background of the Thursday, Sunday games and the record that's there as well. It was a nerve settler for fans, but probably the players too as well.
Absolutely. It came out in a bit odd fashion, but I think it was exactly what we needed. And as you say, nerves definitely started to settle. And I think you could see that it gave them a lot more confidence as well. And if there was any man that was going to score it, it was going to be Miovski, based off recent form. But I've got to admire Richard Jensen's innovation and awareness to just try and get it goalwards and hope for the best. And it worked out. However, even prior to that, Rubezic causing a nuisance, and I'm not certain how. To me, I've watched back quite a lot, and it still looks a little bit like it could have been a handball, but nothing seemed to be made of it at all. I don't really know where it came off him or who it came off exactly, but I've not found a great angle for conclusive evidence as of yet. But regardless, it was good to see him up there making a nuisance of himself, and not for the only time throughout the game, actually, as well. I think I nearly a diving header he got on the end of at one point, if I remember correctly, and fantastic from Richard Jensen, and of course, Miovski was going to prod home.
Yeah, exactly. And as David McLaren said, it was a win with no hoofball. There was passing and everything. And that goal and taking the lead seemed to give us the confidence to ditch the hoofball. There was kind of the balls were going in behind, and a lot of like first touch football, and looking to kind of really utilize the ball as best we can and stretch Ross County where possible. I guess before we come on to the next goal, I will speak about the defence just now, actually, because you mentioned Ruby was a threat at set pieces, but that's maybe the Ruby that Barry's been hoping for a while. That no nonsense defender. And Willie Miller said on Sports Sound yesterday at full time, if you just stick him in the middle and don't ask him to do anything fancy, he's more than capable of doing it. and we've stuck two more than able defenders either side of him in Stefan Gartenmann and Richard Jensen. And I thought Stefan again was superb, and the way he deals with the ball in the air, but also his distribution, I think, is excellent coming out of midfield. But one thing kind of that I've missed from sitting in the upper deck is how well you can kind of watch the game and watch what the players are doing. And I really felt that both Richard and Stefan were very much guiding Ruby through that game as well. Just, right, move a little bit more to the side, but, anything that was in and around his area, Ruby dealt with relative ease. There was still a couple of nervy moments, but, there's not been as much standout issues as we've seen over the last maybe 2-3 weeks. But I think as much as we're going to be praised about the goals and, certainly some of the style of goals we scored, that clean sheet will do that back three and Kel the wonder of goods as well.
Absolutely. And once it was 4-0 and the game was sort of petering out a little bit, I was just hoping that we held on to that clean sheet. But absolutely credit to Rubezic. I think when you tell him your job is to win the ball, no nonsense, and if you get the chance to play, you'll likely have one of the two centre backs who are a little bit more capable either side of you, get it off to them. And I thought all three were absolutely brilliant. I think we're starting to see the benefit of the consistency of those three, playing regularly. There's starting to be sort of understandings between each other, and certainly I think the clean sheet, and hopefully there's going to be many more to come. I'm happy, and I walked away. I think Gartenmann, in particular, between the three, was absolutely excellent, but couldn't really fault any of them. And in fact, there was one time where Ruby looked like he was going to throw himself in, and then he maybe would have picked up a booking or potentially even worse. But he sort of held back a little bit, and he didn't do it, and sort of just put him off a little bit instead. Maybe he's starting to control things a little bit better, which would obviously be a good sign too.
Yeah, or as Mark Robertson says, we just need to get some composure. Ruby, maybe that was an example of him showing a bit of composure to, think about what he was doing before actually going ahead. And as David McLennan says, and this will be a point I'm sure many Don's group chats or office discussions will be kind of taking up in the next few days, he says, I think that's the back three, and Angus MacDonald will struggle to get back in. And consistency is the key to a good defence. And as you mentioned, building up that partnerships and relationships understanding. It could well be a struggle to see Angus MacDonald get back into the side just at this present moment.
Yeah, definitely at this present moment. There will be times where it will be required. I'm sure there will be some suspensions, there will be some injury and just general fatigue. But in terms of having if you want to have your best 11 in mind, they would probably be the three centre-backs you would go for right now. However, there is also opportunities, I'm sure, for players to play themselves out of the starting 11, and there will be opportunities for players to play themselves in. I mean, we've mentioned McDonald there, not even mentioned Reece Williams, who once again didn't even make the bench.
Yeah, no, that's very true. In these games, goals can turn momentum and change games quickly, and we make it 2-0 just shy of half time, and it's quite comical the way Ross County defend this goal. But also, we've got to remember that this came from a Ross County corner where we put two up at the corner and they left one back. And you said before we started recording this episode or going live, for those tuned in just now, that it was actually Duk that won the ball first of all, and a lung bursting run from Graham Shinney broke into the box. And then, I mean, I'm so glad first, reading some of the comments under the team news about the fact that he shouldn't be in the starting lineup yesterday. I'm so glad, despite his best efforts to nearly mess it up, that Duk found the back of the net, because I think that goal will do him the world of good.
Absolutely, it will. I think he saw how relieved he was, but as we say, sort of even aside from the goal, it was him that won the ball. I thought throughout the game he was playing to his strengths a lot more. He was applying himself very well throughout the game, I thought, and that's despite grabbing a goal and an assist as well. But the fact he won the ball, and then you see it in, I think, one of the replays on Sports Scene, he is so far back when Shinney and Hayes are first breaking. It's unbelievable. and he gets ahead of even another Aberdeen player, perhaps McGrath, I think, and is so desperate to get up there and support. And credit Johnny Hayes as well, after he'd been whacked for belting it up there as well. And I think I'm just so happy for him, and hopefully we can see him start to put a little bit more of a run together now. I think you could see that he really, really enjoyed it. And fair play to Graham Shinney as well. I thought he did very, very well. I thought he messed up a little bit when he first sort of cut back on himself. I think it was a little Cruyff turn, actually, which I didn't know he had in his locker. And I mean, Duke just about got it over the line. I was a little bit nervous.
Yeah, the first touch, and it's got a bit of comical element to it as well, because Miovski almost, is it Miovski? Is slide tackling in, and they both nearly clean themselves out. I'm just glad it found the back of the net, because he needed it, and it just gave us that kind of cushion for the second half, because it would have really forced Ross County out to I mean, they could have easily got themselves one goal, but I never really felt that they were going to score 2 or 3 to win that game. And then it also then allows us to make the changes in the second half that come up, and maybe rest some players, give the likes of Esther Sokler and Pap some extra game time. But scoring 2 minutes before halftime was great. Scoring 2 minutes after halftime was even better, and that was the Aberdeen we saw last season under Barry Robson. That was such an aesthetically pleasing goal to watch, whether that be live or on the telly as well. Pass and move, and excellently finished. Miovski with the assist this time for Jamie McGrath to get his first Dons goal.
Absolutely. I mean, extremely unselfish from Miovski, but the build-up was incredible. We broke fast in numbers, and you know what? McGrath earned that goal. I thought he was absolutely outstanding. I mean, there wasn't anyone on the park that wouldn't have deserved a goal, but I thought he was absolutely brilliant in getting up in support of Duk and Miovski. I was very, very impressed and delighted for him, especially as he had a goal chalked off in Sweden as well. And very, very unselfish play from Miovski. And if there was any nerves left by that point, I think that very much settled things. But also massive credit to Miovski throughout the game, just absolutely incredible. And it does feel like he's gone up a notch sort of this season. And if he can continue getting better, then I will be absolutely delighted, so long as it's in an Aberdeen shirt.
Yeah, and I guess that's the problem, if you want, in inverted commas. And Mark Robertson put this in the comments a few moments ago, and it's worth kind of discussing now then. And his question was, when do we start discussing the fact Miovski is going to be in demand for a winter transfer if he carries on with his form, scoring, creating? And I think the last point is all-round play is fantastic. The close control that he had in that first half, where the ball just seemed glued to his foot before he played the through ball that Duke barged past 2 Ross County defenders, and unlucky not to score there. That little passage of play from Miovski was incredible, and it's what he's learned to do off the ball under Barry Robson. I remember last season I was quite critical of him, saying he didn't work hard enough, but as you said, Calum, he seems to have gone up that level. Southampton were sniffing about in the summer. Obviously, Che Adams never left, so they never came in with anything concrete. But he's going to start grabbing the attention of scouts across Europe if he keeps this level of performance up. And we're going to have a fight on our hands potentially come January, as Mark alludes to.
Potentially. I'd like to think that we won't sort of screw ourselves by selling in January. And in terms of Miovski, maybe for him, if they see that he's able to do it across 2 full seasons, then that might earn him a better move, I suppose, too. And besides, we'll be in the knockout rounds of the Conference League too, so he's got to enjoy himself and going deep in cup competitions, I'm sure, as well. So I'm just happy he's here. I'm delighted that he's started the season very well. Really, really happy that Duke's managed to grab a goal. I think he really, really needed that. And whilst we're here, I'm sure you're planning on talking about him as well. Connor Barron, I think he was involved initially in the very start of the build-up for the third goal. and it might have even been him that won the ball. I can't quite remember. He was absolutely excellent, and he went mental for the first goal as well, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And I noticed that at the end of the game, actually, too, at the full-time whistle. He loves a massive fist pump, and I thought he was absolutely incredible, and would probably deserve to keep his spot going into the next game too. And this is a
Yeah.
man that we've been very critical of on here because, well, we've barely seen him, I suppose. But
Yeah.
he can keep developing like this and ideally signs a new contract, then I would be very, very happy.
Yeah, I was actually just going to come on to the midfield, and after just rounding up that Miovski chat, with Skoxer's comment saying, why are we putting pressure on having to sell Miovski? Why not offer him a contract extension instead? But no, look, absolutely. Midfield, Jamie McGrath was a player that scored that goal. We'll come on to him in a second, but a lot of comments coming in around Connor Barron. And, I said in that preview, I think that Hibs and Hearts games, he was probably our best midfielder. And I mentioned about his performances in the Scotland under-21 game against Spain as well. And he's a player, I hate using this cliche, but a player almost reborn this season, playing with a newfound confidence. And I just think his range of passing yesterday was really good. Sometimes not amazing. There was a couple of times he rushed a couple of passes, and we gave away cheap possession in our own half. But what I did like was how quickly he wanted to get the ball up the pitch. Is that what you were going to say?
Basically, I was going to say I like the fact that he tried it, just absolutely hoofing it long and giving away the ball anyway. I like the fact he was trying it. It showed that he was confident, showed that he was enjoying himself, and I certainly enjoyed his performance.
Yeah, and I also, as you referred to that video on Twitter about the fist pump at the first goal, just showing how much it means as well. But I guess we better not speak about Jay Moyer's comments on that first goal and what that might mean for him after seeing his quote tweet related to that. But as Skoxer said earlier on in the episode, what a difference with Connor or Dante in that position, rather than dropping Leighton Clarkson back there. I think we saw it on Thursday against Frankfurt, and we saw it again yesterday. I guess Jamie McGrath was maybe playing in that more Leighton Clarkson role, if you want, more kind of the more forward midfield. But I think both Dante and Connor have probably taken a bit of pressure off Graham Shinney as well, because you thought Graham Shinney was looking maybe back to his best yesterday as well.
Yes, I've been, well, not just myself, but I think a few people have been rather vocal about maybe doubts around his capabilities to play 2 games in a week in the intense manner that he tends to. I, however, was incredibly impressed, obviously heavily involved in our second goal. I thought that was one of Graham Shinney's best games in a long time for us, and it was made even more enjoyable by the fact that Ross County fans do not like him because he played for Inverness County Thistle. Whilst I'm all Ross County fans, by the way, weirdly chirpy, which was interesting. I didn't expect it from them. Very, very chirpy throughout the game, so I'm glad they got an absolute battering. But Graham Shinney was excellent, and I hope he carries it on. I think it was his best game for us in a while.
Yeah, and look, there's a lot of comments around Connor Barron and the fact that he never signed his contract offer last season. Obviously, we don't know the ins and outs of it. The rumours are that the wages he was being offered in comparison to some of the other first team players was disrespectful potentially. He might have just been unhappy about the opportunities for first team minutes compared to what he's been getting this season, but it shows potentially a level of maturity that he's putting that kind of issues, if you want to call it, behind him and letting that go so far for this season and not getting distracted. I guess you mentioned about whether he plays on Wednesday against Ross County. Tavis Thompson says, has he cemented himself into the team for just now? Dante put in a great performance on Thursday night. Connor did just as well on Sunday. It's a good headache to have in that centre of midfield, and I think Adam Heddle also picked up on the depth that we've got now in that midfield. We kind of spoke about, is there that quality there? But certainly over the last two games, the midfield's certainly beginning to shine in terms of quality.
They are. It'll be very interesting to see the three that that Barry goes with on Wednesday, because based off the performance of all three, I don't think any of them deserve dropped. And that does feel very harsh, particularly on Dante Polvara, given his exploits on the continent. However, it's an interesting one for Leighton Clarkson as well, because he was obviously excellent on loan last season. I think he struggled, perhaps, whether it's the system or whatever. He's not been quite at the levels we know he can be, but he's going to have to be to get back in the team ahead of the likes of Barron, McGrath and Polvara.
But in the same sense, though, I think it's, going back to Jim Goodwin's time when he spoke about being able to have quality coming off the bench. If you can rely on a player like Leighton Clarkson that can pick a pass and have a moment of brilliance from a set piece, like we saw it at moments last season, St Johnstone and St Mirren, of course, where he scored free kicks, that is an advantage to a team like us looking to finish at least third this season. And we've now got that 3 points for the first time on the board, and we can hopefully continue looking up the table rather than over our shoulders as well. Jamie McGrath got his first goal for the club yesterday. I think he's a player that we were very open about being unsure of the signing, but continuing to go from strength to strength during his short Aberdeen career so far. Was that his best game for us yesterday?
I think so. I was very, very impressed. As I mentioned, sort of in particular, how much he was getting up in support of Duk and Miovski, and at times he seemed to be central with those two alongside him when we were in attack. And I thought he was absolutely brilliant, thoroughly deserved the goal, and just adds to our threats and adds to, I suppose, a selection headache for Barry Robson. Now that we were just sort of referring to, I think if he can produce and there's a bit more end product from him in terms of goals, assists, being involved in goals, whatever, for the rest of the season, then we'll be very happy, and it could be potentially rather shrewd business given the fact it was a free transfer.
Very true. And Mr. /10 said Hayes hasn't been getting much of a mention, but a lot of our good performance came from him as well. And I think he got an absolute battering in that first 10 minutes after coming off the bench. But for a player that's maybe lost that little bit of yard of pace that he once had, he's certainly not shy of standing up for the fight and playing for the jersey when called upon. And I think Mr. /10, I'd agree with that. A lot of our good play and energy came, certainly in that first half, came from his side. And it was a cameo in the end because obviously he didn't last the full game. Jack McKenzie coming on to replace him later on in the game. But I think he can be proud of his performance yesterday.
Absolutely. I was impressed with Johnny. It was his ball for Miovski to then assist Jamie McGrath as well, I believe. And I was impressed with Johnny. I was caught in two minds sort of between him and Ryan Duncan, and I think they made the right decision for who came on at sort of left wing back. And it'll be interesting to see if he sort of, I say, keeps his place, but he didn't start the game. You know what I mean? Coming into Wednesday, because I suppose there is the option of going with Ryan Duncan or Jack McKenzie as well, because I think it's fair to say Jamie McGarry will be out of this one. So I certainly think he didn't do his case any harm, and obviously the experience as well can be very useful. And they didn't like Johnny Hayes in the Ross County away end either, for obvious reasons.
Yeah, sounds like they were a very unhappy bunch.
They really, really were. There was a few in particular that were very, very, very angry boys / men.
I forgot what I was actually going to say about that team moving forward. It'll come back to me. We made it 4-0 though. Rounding off the scoring in some style, Miovski getting back in on the act. But I said Richard Jensen had an inventive way of assisting Bojan Miovski. So did Duk. He definitely meant that back heel, didn't he?
I honestly think he did. I think he did. He was going down, which some people won't surprise. However, he was sort of lost his footing, kind of bundled over, but not enough for it to be a foul. And I think he just was aware that Miovski was there. So if anyone's going to try to do that sort of shit, it's going to be Duk. And if anyone's going to pull it off, it's probably going to be him as well. And it turned out to be an excellent assist. I thoroughly enjoyed Bojan Miovski sitting 2 Ross County players on his arse before he wellied it home, however. And very, very good to see that link up back between those two. And Miovski fair weathered it, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Ross Laidlaw had absolutely no chance. And I do remember what I was going to say when I said Johnny Hayes could be proud of his performance. He can also be relieved that he didn't finish that game with a broken leg as well, or a concussion, knowing his luck.
Mm-hmm. Very true, very true. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if he is fit. Obviously, went off as well going into Wednesday. It'll be interesting to see what happens there.
I guess the other thing, kind of looking ahead a little bit to Wednesday, but still speaking about yesterday's game, was the physicality that was on show from the away side. Obviously, we spoke about the challenge on Johnny Hayes, but there was a challenge on Duk in the second half where, again, they seemed to fly in from all directions and half him as he was on the touchline on the main stand side. There was, I think, one of their players also went down the back of Richard Jensen's ankle, which he wasn't too pleased about as well. They were certainly not afraid to leave their mark. Now, when you think we've got Rangers coming up at the weekend and a hugely important game in Europe against Helsinki, I guess that's what you're speaking about. How much do we use the squad on Wednesday as well? And again, something you mentioned in the preview, having to play the same team twice in such quick succession is something that most fans maybe hate, but I'm sure some of the players will hate after they're probably feeling the leftovers from what they came up against on Sunday.
Or I suppose on the flip side, Ross County could be out for their own revenge. However, I'm sure our boys have a point to prove after they resorted to such shit housing tactics. There was another time where Duk was on, I think, the south stand side, and they tried to get him down twice and finally managed on the second time. But it was just great to see boys bouncing off him once again. It's very much enjoyable, but it does make for an interesting podcast. I think I quite like it because we just have to talk about one team, I suppose. But in terms of playing 2 teams in quick succession, I don't like it because I feel like we're never going to win the both of them. But it'll be weird to see. It'll be interesting to see. What sort of team we go with, because perhaps Ross County will prepare for a similar side, but if they're preparing for Connor Barron, then all of a sudden they've got Dante Polvara, it could be very different for them. And I suppose that's where having this squad is very beneficial. And likewise, the sort of strikers too as well. And we saw Sockler and Papi Habib Gay come off the bench when the game was sort of pretty dead with about 20 minutes to go. It'll be interesting to see if one of them sort of gets a run out. However, I wouldn't change it, especially since neither Duk or Miovski played the full 90 against Frankfurt or Ross County.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And John Smith calls Ross County thugs. That's his words, not ours. Choose to agree one way or another. But a weak referee encouraged their thuggery, and I think that's an excellent point. As I mentioned about the challenge on Hayes, the reluctance almost it felt from Don Robertson to give a booking. Again, question marks on what is the point in VAR and why is that not getting involved. But I did, again, we spoke about leniency in refereeing in Europe on Thursday. There seemed to be a bit of leniency in towards some of the decisions to book Ross County players for their challenges at the weekend.
They're just shit and inconsistent all across the world, aren't they? He was hopeless, and of course we've got John Beaton on Wednesday, and as you mentioned on the Twitter page or on your personal, I can't quite remember.
Yeah,
Twitter RTG_podcast. Get involved. No VAR on Wednesday, which will be interesting to see how that goes, and the fact that Ross County chose not to use it because they know they're shithousing bastards. So it'll be
that and the fact that it's, I think, £10,000 a game to run, so they don't want to pay that cost because it's optional for cup games. So
Roy McGregor's struggling so much with his fucking oil company, isn't he?
I just think it's a farce that that grounds where VAR is already in place, clubs have the option not to implement it. And how raging are we going to be if it comes down to a dodgy decision that puts us out the cup? At least it gives us an excuse anyway.
That's true. Not that Barry will need any. I'm sure he'll find some.
No,
But it's not going to happen anyway. We're winning it.
No. Interesting point that came in from Skoksker. Rama is not the miss people say, the huge miss people say. The problem was putting Clarkson in that spot. Thoughts, Calum?
I do miss him. He played well for Lecce, according to FOTMob again the other day. So that's upsetting. I think, the balance was very much wrong, and it would have just been far simpler had we had Ramadani. But I think yesterday and Thursday were evidence that life goes on without them, and we do have players that are capable of stepping up to the plate, which is encouraging. However, I do feel that we definitely got it wrong earlier in the season. Must say earlier in the season, a couple of weeks ago. We got it wrong with the balance, but I'm less upset at this stage. I still prefer him to be here, and I definitely prefer that we got more than 1.2 million for him. But it's okay. I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, as he followed up the point, he said Dante in that position against Frankfurt, nobody mentioned Ramadani, so it's just not Clarkson's position. And to be honest, I don't understand why we were playing Leighton Clarkson in that position anyway, as kind of one of our furthest back midfielders, the quarterback role, as I've heard people calling it, and especially when he's more creative, you want him to be linking up to Miovski. And it's no coincidence that when we've not played Leighton in that position either, we've not resorted to hoofing the ball forward at every opportunity as well. So it's just, simple things in football, and we're hopefully going to see a change in fortunes as well. Looking ahead to Wednesday then, Calum, as we get that cup quarter final at Dingwall, how many changes do you expect from that team? You mentioned earlier in the episode about consistency in this team. Specifically, I guess consistency in that back three for me would be key, and I would be happy and keen to see them play again. What other changes, if any, do you expect to see?
I would maybe expect the left wing back to be different. I don't know if Hayes will start anyway. I suppose there's capacity to change one of the midfield three. You probably don't want to upset it too much given the most recent performance. I wouldn't be expecting any more than 3 changes to the side. I think that is sort of a safe place to go in terms of you're freshening things up a little bit. You're giving some guys some rest. However, there's still, the core's still there. And I suppose when you've got one eye, that the fact that after the Rangers game as well, there is an international break, so a chance to rest someone like Nicky Devlin or whoever who won't be going away and certainly won't be being replaced by Ordadia, to be fair. I think I'm expecting 2 or 3. You'd probably say maybe the left wing back position and a centre midfielder. Other than that, you can't see Duk or Miovski being dropped. Can you really?
Not after they've just started cooking up top. You want to maybe encourage that link up play and see if they can kind of build on it a bit further. But I guess, as good as Sunday was, a point that came in from Dandy Don again earlier in the episode, and this is the great thing about kind of doing lives is hearing your guys' thoughts as we're discussing. And I almost agree with this as well, that it'll count for nothing if we don't beat them again, because yes, it's all well and good about getting our league campaign kind of maybe kickstart that win, but this is an ideal opportunity with one half of the Glasgow Cheeks already out of this competition to kick on and gain some silverware. And I think it would give us a real boost going into the weekend and that Helsinki game as well, if we can just get a little bit more momentum going and not feel like it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back.
Yeah, it would be. I don't know if it would be sort of like the 3 points would have been worthless from Sunday, but absolutely. I mean, going into these games, we said it needs to be a win in the league, and we need to be in the next round of the cup. As you mentioned, Celtic already out. Rangers not excellent on the weekend by the looks of things, and I think their fans are very upset despite the fact they just beat Real Betis. I don't know what's going on down there. So there is opportunity, and I suppose Hearts not been fantastic either. Kelly, although started the season pretty well, they had a couple of losses before picking up a point at the weekend. It's a real opportunity, and we need to be in the semi-final. We need to be going to Hampden. I mean, it doesn't have to be as convincing as a 4-0 win. I would take a win on penalties right now. The heart rate might, but I would take it if it meant we are in the semi-final come Thursday morning.
Yeah, and that would give us something even more positive to speak about as we take a look into the weekend's action. In terms of Ross County then, Calum, ahead of Wednesday, was there any players that you thought stood out for them and thought kind of on that tighter pitch up there in Dingwall, there's rumours of Storm Agnes hitting on Wednesday with high winds forecast as well. So again, probably go back to the fact about keeping the ball on deck and kind of passing Ross County off the pitch again. Was there any players that you are concerned about from a Ross County point of view? Because they did have spells, as we spoke about that opening 20 minutes, and obviously had a lot more kind of aerial threat. Is what they looked at, lumping the ball up to Jordan White to knock down for Simon Murray. Any concerns for you going into Wednesday?
I mean, you're probably talking about Jan Danda as the most technical. You would think he always looks a little bit above the rest. Jordan White, however, can always be a real handful. I think we saw him give Anthony Stewart at least one torrid game, possibly more, last season. And I suppose just from set pieces, they are a massive threat, like Baldwin, that big leak fella, and the rest of them coming up from the back. It's always a concern. However, the confidence from the clean sheet, over the weekend will provide us with some comfort, I'm sure. And Simon Murray, I suppose, I don't know. Sometimes I think he's really, really good. Sometimes I think he's absolutely terrible. I think it wasn't my dad. It's the guy behind me, I think, that described him as a ginger freak, just because he was just sprinting about the park the whole game before going off. But he is capable. He can be a good finisher at times. So those are the sort of three, and then also just all the massive jobbers they've got.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's going to be, for me, the kind of worry looking ahead to Wednesday, is that physical battle that we're going to have to come up against once again, and whether or not tiredness because I know it's been playing a part already this season, Barry, if that's going to kick in at all after playing the game Thursday, Sunday, which was kind of that physical battle, and then going again on Wednesday as well, and obviously the travel involved as well. But these guys are professional football players. They should be more than ready and more than capable as well. I think I agree on Danda as well. I thought their number 7, the boy Turner, yesterday, I thought he looked good in midfield as well. But it's just that kind of physical battle, and whether we want to be up for it on Wednesday, and if we can't be up for that battle in a cup quarter final, then when can we be? But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and again, I've enjoyed having a positive podcast here on a Monday, and good to have so many talking points in it as well, in a positive sense too.
Absolutely. And we've maybe shaved about 15 minutes or so off it because it's against the same team. So there we go. But I will be making the trip up. I'm looking forward to it until you mentioned the storm. I didn't know that was going to happen. So I'll prepare my jacket. Thanks very much, Glenn. Otherwise, that could have been a miserable, miserable time. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm very much looking forward to it. A chance to get into the Cup semi-final against the side we've just pumped 4-0. Where could it go wrong?
Yeah, I think there's a yellow warning for high winds, so make sure you're up warm, Calum. And I like how you said absolutely as well, because Jason Campbell said have a shot of whiskey every time. Calum says absolutely. So drink responsibly, but I would really enjoy it if you said absolutely like a heap of times for him.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I can do that, Glenn.
Thank you very much, Calum. And thank you very much to everyone that has tuned in to this episode here live on the Red Tinted Glasses YouTube channel. If you've enjoyed the video tonight, remember to leave a like, comment your thoughts down below if you're catching up as well, and follow us wherever you tune in on audio as well. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on Thursday.